I want to start by describing a particular kind of exhaustion, and I want you to notice if you recognize it. It is not the exhaustion of a hard day's work, the good kind of tired that comes from effort and resolves with rest. It is a deeper, more chronic exhaustion, the kind that does not go away even when you finally have a free afternoon. Because here is the strange part. When you do finally have the free afternoon, you cannot actually rest. You sit down to relax, and within minutes, a restlessness creeps in, a feeling that you should be doing something, a low hum of guilt, as if resting is a kind of failure, a kind of laziness, a kind of stealing. So you get up, you find a task, you answer an email, you clean something, you scroll, which is not rest either, but at least it does not feel like the unbearable stillness of actually doing nothing. If this is you, I want you to know that you are not lazy. Ironically, you are the opposite of lazy. You are someone who has, somewhere along the way, lost the ability to rest and developed a deep guilt around the very thing that would heal your exhaustion. Today I want to talk about why this happens, where the guilt comes from, why your nervous system treats rest as a threat, and how to slowly, patiently teach yourself to relax again without the guilt. Because the inability to rest is not a small problem. It is slowly burning you out, damaging your health, and stealing the peace that is supposed to be one of the rewards of being alive. Stay with me. Let me begin with the most important reframe. For many people who cannot relax, rest does not feel safe. It feels dangerous. This sounds strange, because rest is objectively the opposite of dangerous. But the nervous system is not operating on objective reality. It is operating on old conditioning. And for a lot of us, that conditioning taught us very early that rest was not allowed, was not safe, or had to be earned through endless productivity. So when you try to rest now, your nervous system sounds an alarm. The guilt, the restlessness, the compulsion to get up and do something, these are not character flaws. They are the alarm. Your body is trying to get you back to the state it has been trained to believe is safe, which is the state of doing. Where does this come from? Let me walk through the most common roots. The first root is growing up in a home where your worth was tied to productivity. Maybe you were praised when you were useful, helpful, achieving, and ignored or criticized when you were just being. Maybe rest was framed as laziness in your family, a moral failing, something that good people did not do. Maybe you watched a parent who never stopped working, who treated stillness as a kind of sin, and you absorbed the belief that your value as a person depends on what you produce. If you learned as a child that you were loved for your output, then as an adult, resting feels like withdrawing the very thing that makes you lovable. No wonder it produces guilt. On a deep level, resting feels like becoming worthless. The second root is growing up in an unsafe or unpredictable environment. If your childhood home was chaotic, if you had to stay alert to manage a volatile parent or to take care of younger siblings or to keep the peace, then your nervous system learned that vigilance was survival. Relaxing meant letting your guard down, and letting your guard down was dangerous. As an adult, even in a perfectly safe environment, your nervous system still operates on that old programming. It does not know the danger is over. So it keeps you alert, keeps you busy, keeps you scanning, because the part of you that learned to survive a hard childhood does not believe, yet, that it is finally safe to rest. The third root is the culture we live in, which has turned busyness into a virtue and rest into a guilty pleasure at best, a moral failing at worst. We ask each other how we are, and the proud answer is busy, so busy, slammed. We treat exhaustion as a badge of honor and rest as something we have to justify. We have absorbed the message that our value is measured by our output, that time not spent producing is time wasted, that we are only as good as what we accomplish. This cultural conditioning sits on top of whatever personal conditioning we received, and together they make rest feel almost transgressive. You are swimming against a very strong current when you try to rest in a culture that treats rest as failure. The fourth route is using busyness to avoid feeling. This one is subtle and important. For many people, constant doing is a way of staying ahead of their own inner life. As long as you are busy, you do not have to feel the grief, the anxiety, the emptiness, the questions that surface in stillness. Busyness becomes a kind of medication, a way of numbing out through activity. So when you try to rest, it is not just guilt that surfaces. It is everything you have been outrunning. The stillness opens a door to feelings you have been avoiding, and the discomfort of those feelings drives you back into motion. You are not addicted to productivity because you love productivity. You are addicted to it because it protects you from your own depths. There is a fifth route that I think deserves its own mention because it traps a lot of high-functioning people: identity. For some of us, doing has become who we are. We are the reliable one, the productive one, the one who gets things done, the one everyone can count on. Our entire sense of self is built on being useful. And so rest does not just feel lazy or unsafe. It feels like a threat to our very identity. If I am not producing, who am I? If I stop, do I still matter? The stillness raises an existential question that the busyness has been helping us avoid. This is why some people, when they finally retire or take a long break or get sick and are forced to stop, fall into a crisis. The scaffolding of doing is removed, and they do not know who they are underneath it. If this is you, the work is to slowly build a sense of self that does not depend on productivity, to discover that you are a person of worth even when you are doing nothing at all. That discovery is frightening at first and profoundly freeing in the end. Now let me talk about what this is costing you, because I think we underestimate it. Chronic inability to rest keeps your nervous system in a constant state of low-grade activation. Your body is never fully standing down. This has real consequences. It disrupts your sleep because a nervous system that cannot relax during the day cannot fully relax at night. It wears down your immune system. It contributes to anxiety because the body and mind are never given the chance to settle. It damages your relationships because you are never fully present, always half thinking about the next task. And it robs you of joy because joy requires presence, and presence requires the ability to stop. The cost of not being able to rest is ultimately the cost of not being able to fully live. So how do you heal this? Let me give you the path forward. The first practice is to understand that rest is not earned. It is required. This is a fundamental shift in belief, and it takes time. You have been operating on the assumption that you must earn rest through productivity, that rest is a reward for sufficient achievement. But this is backwards. Rest is not a reward. It is a biological necessity, like food and water. You do not earn the right to eat by being productive enough. You eat because your body requires it. Rest is the same. Your body and mind require rest to function, to heal, to sustain themselves. When you reframe rest as a requirement rather than a reward, the guilt starts to lose its logic. You do not feel guilty for drinking water when you are thirsty. You can learn, slowly, to not feel guilty for resting when you are depleted. The second practice is to start small and tolerate the discomfort. If you cannot rest for an afternoon without crawling out of your skin, do not start with an afternoon. Start with 5 minutes. Sit down, do nothing, and let the discomfort come. Notice the restlessness. Notice the guilt. Notice the urge to get up and be useful. And instead of obeying the urge, just observe it. Tell yourself, this is the alarm, and the alarm is not telling the truth. I am safe. I am allowed to rest. Stay for the 5 minutes, even though every part of you wants to flee. Then gradually extend the time. You are essentially exposure therapy for your own nervous system, slowly teaching it that rest does not lead to catastrophe, that you can be still and survive, that the alarm can sound and you can choose not to obey it. I want to add something practical here about the body, because rest is not only a mental event, it is a physiological one. When you have spent years in a state of activation, your body has forgotten what the relaxation response actually feels like. You may need to teach it directly. Slow, long exhales are one of the fastest ways to signal safety to the nervous system, because a long exhale activates the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and recovery. So when you sit down to rest and the alarm starts, try breathing in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 8. Do this for a couple of minutes. You are not just distracting yourself. You are physically downshifting your nervous system, sending it a chemical signal that the threat is over and it is safe to stand down. Over time, with repetition, the body relearns how to drop into rest, and the relaxation that felt impossible starts to become accessible again. The mind and the body heal this together, not separately. The third practice is to separate rest from productivity entirely. A lot of people try to make their rest productive, which is not rest. They listen to the educational podcast while they walk. They read the self-improvement book during their downtime. They turn their hobbies into side hustles. Even their leisure has to justify itself by producing something. True rest is rest that produces nothing, that has no purpose beyond itself, that is allowed to be a complete waste of time by the logic of productivity. Lying in the grass, watching the clouds, sitting with a cup of tea and doing nothing else, letting yourself be bored. This kind of purposeless rest is exactly what your nervous system needs, and it is exactly what the productive mind resists most. Practice doing things that have no point. The pointlessness is the medicine. The fourth practice is to address the feelings that surface in stillness. If part of why you cannot rest is that stillness brings up feelings you have been avoiding, then the path to rest runs through those feelings. You have to be willing, gradually, to feel what surfaces when you stop moving. This might be grief you have not processed, anxiety you have been outrunning, emptiness you have been filling with activity, questions about your life you have been afraid to ask. When these surface in stillness, instead of fleeing back into busyness, try to stay with them, gently. Let yourself feel them. They are not as unbearable as the avoidance has made them seem. And as you process them, the stillness becomes less threatening because there is less waiting in the depths to ambush you. This is often work that is easier to do with a therapist who can help you face what you have been avoiding without being overwhelmed. The fifth practice is to question the belief that your worth depends on your output. This is the deep root, and it requires ongoing attention. Every time you feel guilty for resting, there is an underlying belief operating, which is that you are only valuable when you are producing. Challenge it. Ask, is it actually true that I am only worth something when I am useful? Would I apply that standard to anyone I love? Do I believe that a person who is resting, who is sick, who is old, who is simply being, has no value? Of course not. You would never apply this standard to others. You apply it only to yourself because you absorbed it before you could question it. So question it now. Your worth is not your output. Your worth is inherent. You were worthy before you ever accomplished anything, when you were an infant who could do nothing but exist. And you are worthy now, whether or not you are being productive. This belief takes years to fully shift, but every time you challenge the guilt, you weaken the old conditioning a little more. The sixth practice is to build rest into your life as a structure, not as something you do only when you collapse. A lot of people who struggle with rest only stop when their body forces them to, when they get sick, when they burn out, when they break down. This is the most painful and least sustainable way to rest. Instead, build rest into the architecture of your week, on purpose, before you need it. A day with nothing scheduled. An evening that is protected from work. A morning that begins slowly. When rest is a planned, normal part of your life, rather than an emergency measure, it stops feeling like a guilty exception and starts feeling like a natural rhythm. This also takes the decision out of the moment. You do not have to wrestle with the guilt every single time, because the rest is already built in, already decided, already a non-negotiable part of how your life is structured. The structure carries you through the moments when the guilt would otherwise win. I want to address something important before I close. There is a difference between rest and avoidance, and I do not want to confuse them. Lying on the couch, scrolling for 6 hours while avoiding your responsibilities is not the kind of rest I am talking about. That is often avoidance, and it usually leaves you feeling worse, not better. The rest I am describing is different. It is intentional. It is restorative. It is the conscious choice to stop, to be still, to let your system recover. It leaves you feeling replenished, not more depleted. The goal is not to do nothing forever. The goal is to restore your relationship with genuine rest, so that you can move between meaningful work and true restoration in a sustainable rhythm, the way a healthy life is supposed to flow. I will leave you with this. Your inability to rest is not a sign that you are disciplined or hardworking or virtuous, even though the culture might frame it that way. It is a sign that somewhere you learned that you were not safe to stop, or not worthy unless you were producing. That learning was not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility, and it is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. A life without rest is not a life of achievement. It is a life of slow depletion, of present sacrifice to productivity, of joy postponed indefinitely for a someday that never comes. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be still and do nothing and simply exist, without earning it, without justifying it, without guilt. Learning to believe that deep in your body is the work of a lifetime and it is worth every moment you put into it. I want to add one more thought, because I think it reframes the whole thing. We tend to imagine that rest is what happens in the gaps between the important parts of life, that the work is the real life and the rest is just maintenance, like refueling a car so it can keep driving. But that is backwards. The rest is not in service of the work. The work is in service of a life, and that life includes rest, presence, stillness, connection, joy, all the things that productivity is supposed to make possible. If you spend your whole life refueling the car and never actually going anywhere you love, never stopping to look at the view, never resting in the warmth of being alive, then what was all the driving for? The rest is not the thing you do so you can get back to the real life. The rest, the presence, the stillness, is the real life. The work is what you do to support it. When you get that order right, the guilt begins to dissolve, because you finally understand that resting is not a betrayal of your purpose. It is the fulfillment of it. If this resonated with you, please give the video a like. It really helps me reach more people who are exhausted and cannot figure out why. And if you want more videos like this, where we look at the patterns that quietly run our lives and how to change them, please subscribe. I have a lot more to share, and I would love to keep walking through it with you. Take care of yourself this week. Try 5 minutes of purposeless rest. Notice the guilt and the restlessness, and stay anyway. Remind yourself that you are safe, that you are allowed, that your worth does not depend on what you produce. You have been running for a long time. It is okay to stop now. I will see you in the next one.